Is that a fire alarm?
Yeah. We'll just stand at ease just for a couple of minutes until we understand the nature of the fire alarm.
Well, the nature of a fire alarm was there was a fire at City Hall campus yesterday, and that was after some heated rhetoric in the council chambers from citizens upset about the proposal of more than $230 million of tax increases, and also upset that the citizens say they haven't gotten a clear picture of how much money was spent on non-citizens. And Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson says he's going with his hands up first to get more tax dollars from the state and federal government, but Governor Pritzker saying they're already in line to get more education dollars. The latest on Chicago's budget. Thought yesterday they could possibly vote on a budget, but apparently Friday they're coming in to vote on a budget. The city of Chicago has until the end of the month to pass a spending plan for the coming fiscal year, and it could be $18 billion, but they were going into it with an estimated $1 billion deficit. Originally, Mayor Johnson proposed a $300 million property tax increase. City Council unanimously voted that down, came back with half of that request, and then apparently they landed on around a $70 million request for a tax increase, property taxes, with the annual increase linked to the Consumer Price Index, so it would go up every year. Then you have proposed tax increases on things like shopping bags or streaming services or rideshare or parking, and all of it's around $230+ million of proposed tax increases. So they could vote on that Friday. But yesterday they had a city council meeting, and every city council meeting opens with 30 minutes of public comments, and Jessica Jackson got up to share her thoughts on the proposed tax increases and the lack of transparency when it comes to spending on non-citizen migrants in Chicago.
The stupidity of this administration to think that we don't know any better than to know that you all are going to pass that budget with all those tax increases. The stupidity to think that we don't know that you all could have corrected this stuff a long time ago. The stupidity to think that you all could come with this type of cut, this type of recommendation, and not come with the true accounting of how much money was spent on these illegals. You all have yet to be transparent with that. That's the biggest financial downfall of the city. Yet, there has not been any type of audit, any type of financial accounting for illegal immigration.
So Jessica Jackson obviously has been a regular speaker there. So has Zoe Lee, and they're actually taken to their own YouTube channel with discussions that they're sharing out of Chicago as part of the movement Go Red, Flip Red. And interesting to see that, especially in the past couple of years, as they've been regulars in front of the city council. Critical of the city's handling of non-citizen migrants. And we've seen them demand that Tom Homan from the incoming Trump administration come to Chicago first, and all of the back and forth we've heard there. But others got up to address the city council, pushing for the budget to be passed. But Sonia Catan, a resident of the city of Chicago, got up and shared some of her thoughts as to the frustration and anger she hears, claiming it's misplaced.
I'm going to be very honest. I'm feeling very scared, to be perfectly honest. There's been a lot of xenophobia that has been spoken in this room today, and I understand that there is a lot of anger, and that anger is being directed in the wrong place. I came to the United States when I was 7 years old. My documentation status does not need to be revealed. There is a lot of anger in this room, and that is understandable. I am tired of paying ridiculous amounts to be able to get my groceries. I am tired of how high rent is. There is so much anger that exists in the people of the city of Chicago, and all of that anger is valid. You have every right to be angry because it feels too expensive to survive, but we are putting that anger in the wrong place. We are spending $170 million in this budget cycle for vacant officer positions.
She went on to criticize spending in other places, saying that the frustration from residents she's heard is misplaced. And that was citizen Sonia Catan of the city of Chicago. So after 30 minutes went by, you had more speakers get up, but some of the audience was verbally speaking out in between speakers and such, and Mayor Brandon Johnson didn't take that kindly.
19 yeses.
So they went on with city business, and as city business went on, they were voting on various motions, and then all of a sudden...
Again, Mr. Chairman, I move passage of these items by the last most favorable roll call vote of the Budget Committee report and the associated unsuccessful motion to reconsider.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Is that a fire alarm?
Yeah.
Is that a fire alarm?
Just stand at ease just for a couple of minutes until we understand the nature of the fire alarm.
All right. I think you're supposed to get up and move when you have a fire alarm, not understand the nature of a fire alarm. At least that's what I was taught in school. You hear it and just don't question it, go.
All right, this meeting will stand in recess. This meeting will stand in recess.
So I was covering this yesterday remotely, and it threw a wrench in my whole day. They didn't come back for like 3 hours or something like that. But obviously, the mayor was supposed to have a news conference yesterday. That news conference was postponed until Friday. They're going to come back as a city council Friday, and it's expected they could pass the budget.
Ladies and gentlemen, silence please. If I could have your attention, if you would evacuate this room and go to the lobby, please use the stairwell.
Obviously, pretty interesting day yesterday at the city of Chicago. So no news conference from Mayor Johnson yesterday. We'll have one Friday, and we'll talk about that on Monday. But Monday this week, Johnson did hold a news conference about a different issue, but he was asking about the budget, and he says he's going to put his hand up to get more tax dollars from the state and federal government.
A budget that would lay off workers and cut services is just, one that should not be tolerated by any Chicagoan. And I know these are difficult financial times, not just in Chicago, but around the globe. A $3 billion deficit projected for the state of Illinois, a $2.7 billion projection of a deficit for Maryland. This is a challenge all over the country. What the city of Chicago is doing is we're putting our hand up first. We're jumping to the front of the line and saying that we have to fight for progressive revenue. That's what's right about this budget. It invests in people. We don't cut services and lay people off. And my team is working regularly with the governor's team to find progressive revenue. Had we passed Bring Chicago Home, that would have been $100 million for this issue. Had the PP, the personal property replacement tax, had that not been expired, that's $162 million that was a corporate giveaway, right? And so these are the things that my administration will continue to work through on behalf people of Chicago.
So Johnson's budget could, again, be voted on Friday. This obviously comes before the state of Illinois has a new fiscal year, 6 months before the fact. Illinois' fiscal year doesn't start until July 1st of 2025. So obviously the state legislatures are going to come in through spring session. We're going to talk a lot about the state budget. We'll dissect that thing quite a bit here with Illinois in focus. But the Chicago city budget obviously relies a lot on some state tax dollars, your tax dollars, even if you live in Cairo. And ultimately, Governor J.B. Pritzker was asked about the budget constraints in Chicago and what more the state can do, especially when it comes to Chicago public schools. Is the state going to give Chicago more money or look for that, quote, progressive revenue that Johnson's looking for? Here's the governor yesterday.
Well, I'd remind you that that every year we've increased funding for education all across the state, not just for the city of Chicago, all across the state of Illinois, and it's been demonstrated as a priority of my administration, education across the board and K-12 education. So just know that every meeting that I go into where we contemplate what the next move is with regard to the budget, that's a consideration for everybody in the room. In terms of the demands that people are making or the statements that they're making about, look, that's what evidence-based funding, what that whole model was all about, was it's going to take years. when people say, well, you owe us X amount of money. Yeah, and we've been paying up every year, to try to get there. But there's not, it would be like asking somebody to pay their entire mortgage today when they've got 10 years left on it or 5 years left on it. And that's not something that the state can do. Meanwhile, if we prioritize education, and the evidence-based funding model does that, then we'll move closer and closer and finally get to the goal of the evidence-based funding formula.
So the governor talking about budgeting. He also talked briefly about pensions. He may hold a separate news conference about pensions, he said. But we're going to get into budget season for the Illinois legislature after the new year when a new General Assembly is seated. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on in Illinois and even how Chicago is impacting you as a taxpayer in downstate Illinois, hopefully you do subscribe to America's Talking Network to wake up with us each and every weekday morning. And you can get the headlines in your inbox. Go to thecentersquare.com/Illinois. Register for the newsletter there. But also you can get the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus and you can make it happen there. All right. I'm Greg Bishop. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air and you can join me there on X, on Facebook, Instagram, and beyond. So find me, connect with me. It's always good to see how far the reach is. It is Illinois in Focus Daily.